A sleepless billionaire, a shaky security feed, a nanny frozen at the alarm keypad like she's about to run. What Michael found on that moonless night wasn't just a strange employee. It was the first real crack in the fortress he built after his wife died. It was a plan in plain sight, carefully hidden, tied to where she went every day and the kind of people he was taught to fear. A plan that would have stayed invisible if he hadn't planted a tracker on the wrong car and followed the red dot into a neighborhood where money can't buy forgiveness. This is the story of how one decision to watch turned a father into a suspect and changed 3 lives forever. The only light in the master bedroom came from the iPad screen, casting a corpse-like pallor over Michael Hayes' face. It was 11:42 p.m. The house was silent, that expensive vacuum-sealed silence that only money and isolation can buy. On the screen, a grainy black and white feed showed the hallway downstairs. If you believe the people we trust with our children deserve respect, not surveillance, hit like right now. And if you're new here, subscribe for emotional stories about grief, hard choices, and second chances, because tonight, Michael Hayes is about to watch a perfect nanny do something that will change everything. Michael didn't blink. He was a man who built skyscrapers for a living. He understood that structural integrity depended on knowing exactly where the stress fractures were. And right now, he was looking for a fracture. In the video feed, Ava Morgan, the nanny, was moving. She wasn't stealing silver. She wasn't drinking his scotch. She was standing by the front door, her hand hovering over the keypad of the alarm system. She looked at her phone, typed a text, and then erased it. She leaned her forehead against the cold wood of the door, her shoulders shaking. Was she crying? Or was she laughing? From the grainy angle, Michael couldn't tell. But his gut twisted. It was the same sensation he'd had 3 years ago, sitting in a sterile hospital waiting room, waiting for a doctor to tell him that Sarah wasn't coming back. It was the sensation of losing control. He swiped to the next camera. The driveway. Ava's beat-up Honda Civic was parked slightly askew. "What are you hiding?" he whispered to the empty room. He wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was asking out of survival. Since Sarah died, Michael had turned his life into a fortress. His grief was managed like a portfolio, compartmentalized, analyzed, and secured. Caleb, his 7-year-old son, was the asset that needed protecting. And Ava was the firewall he had installed 6 months ago. She was perfect on paper. Too perfect. She made Caleb laugh, a sound Michael hadn't heard in years. She cooked meals that didn't taste like cardboard. She brought oxygen into a house that had been suffocating in dust. But for the last 3 weeks, the oxygen had thinned. Ava was leaving exactly at 6 p.m., rushing out the door. Her phone was always face down. She had bags under her eyes that concealer couldn't hide. On the screen, Ava finally pulled away from the door and walked back toward the kitchen. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking up into the darkness, directly at the camera lens. For a second, Michael felt seen. He almost dropped the iPad. She didn't wave. She just stared, her expression unreadable, before disappearing into the guest wing. Michael set the tablet on the knit stand. His heart was hammering against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that mocked his calm exterior. He opened a drawer and pulled out the small GPS tracker he used for his company's fleet vehicles. It was the size of a quarter. If life was going to betray him again, he would see it coming this time. He would map the betrayal before it hit him. The hours bled into one another. 2 a.m., 3:15 a.m., 4:40 a.m. The digital time code on the screen was the only thing changing in Michael's world. His eyes burned, dry and gritty, but he couldn't close them. Every shadow on the screen looked like a threat. Every pixelated movement of a tree branch outside looked like an intruder. He was starving, but the thought of food made him nauseous. He was exhausted, but sleep felt like surrender. If he closed his eyes, Sarah died all over again. If he watched the screen, he was in control. It was a lie, of course. He wasn't the guard dog. He was the prisoner. I will know, he promised the silence. I will know everything. The kitchen was a study in marble and morning light. It was clean, cold, and echoing. Michael stood by the espresso machine, his suit armor-plated perfection. Beside him, Caleb sat on a high stool, his legs dangling, swinging rhythmically. Thump, thump. Eat your toast, Caleb, Michael said, not looking up from his phone. He was checking the Nikkei index, but his mind was on the GPS tracker currently burning a hole in his pocket. I'm not hungry, Caleb murmured. He was small for 7, shrinking into himself since the funeral. He had Sarah's eyes, big, dark, and currently filled with a quiet resignation that terrified Michael. You need protein. We talked about this. School requires energy. It tastes like sand. It's whole grain. The back door opened and Ava breezed in. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly, like a window had been thrown open in a stuffy attic. She was wearing an oversized sweater and jeans, her hair in a messy bun that somehow looked deliberate. Good morning, gentlemen, she said. Her voice had a texture to it, warm, lived in. She dropped her bag and immediately went to Caleb, ignoring Michael. Sand toast again? Caleb looked up and the corner of his mouth twitched. A micro smile. Dad says it's fuel. Dad is technically right, but fuel doesn't have to be boring. Ava grabbed a jar of strawberry jam from her bag, store-bought, full of sugar, the kind Michael never allowed. She slathered it on the toast. Eat the red part. It makes you faster at recess. Caleb took a bite. Michael watched them, feeling a sudden, sharp pang of jealousy. He was the provider. He was the protector. Why was he the stranger? He cleared his throat. Ava, a word? She stiffened. Just a fraction, but he saw it. She turned, her smile fading into a professional mask. Of course, Mr. Hayes. They moved to the foyer. Michael checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than Ava's car. It was his anchor. Time was the only thing he respected. You left the alarm unarmed for 3 minutes last night, he said, his voice flat. Ava blinked. I was checking the lock. It was sticking. At midnight? I couldn't sleep. I wanted to make sure everything was secure. It was a lie. He could hear the tremor in it. A bad lie. We have protocols, Ava. Security is not a variable. It's a constant. I know. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. She looked away, her eyes darting to the front door. Actually, Mr. Hayes, I need to ask, could I leave at 5:30 today? I have an appointment. Again? Michael crossed his arms. That's the 3rd time this week. Is everything all right? Yes. Just personal maintenance. Dental. Your teeth must be incredibly high maintenance, he said dryly. She didn't laugh. She looked exhausted. I'll make up the hours on the weekend, please. He stared at her. He wanted to say no. He wanted to demand the truth. But he needed her. Caleb needed her. And that dependency made him weak. Fine, he said, turning his back. But don't make a habit of it. He walked to the garage, his footsteps clicking on the polished floor. As he passed her Honda Civic, he paused. He looked back at the house. Ava was in the kitchen, laughing with Caleb. Michael crouched down. With a practiced hand, he slid the magnetic GPS tracker under the rear bumper of her car. Click. The sound was satisfying. It was the sound of control returning. The office of Hayes Capital Partners was a glass box floating 40 stories above the city grid. The air was recycled, scrubbed, and kept at a precise 68 degrees. Michael sat at the head of the mahogany conference table. Around him, 6 men in suits worth more than the average car were arguing about the Tokyo Logistics merger. If we don't restructure the debt by noon, the stock drops 15%. David, his Q said, sweating slightly. Michael, are you listening? Michael wasn't listening. He had his iPad propped up against his water bottle. On the screen, the red GPS dot representing Ava's car was stationary near Caleb's school. It had been idling for 14 minutes. Why? Was she talking to someone? Was she meeting a dealer? Was she negligent? Michael. David slammed his hand on the table. Michael blinked, the room snapping back into focus. He looked at David like he was an insect on a blueprint. "Sell the retail division," Michael said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Cut the weight." "That's 300 jobs, Mike. 300 families." "Structural integrity requires load management," Michael replied, turning back to the screen. "If the beam is too heavy, the roof collapses. Cut them." He put his earbuds in. He had installed audio surveillance in the living room 3 days ago. He told himself it was for redundancy. It was actually for control. He tapped the app. The feed hissed with white noise, then clarified. "And then the dinosaur ate the broccoli." Ava's voice. "No way. Terex creates carnivores." Caleb's voice. Laughing. It was a belly laugh. A sound Michael hadn't been able to extract from his son in 2 years. Jealousy, hot and viscous, clawed up Michael's throat. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was envy. This stranger was stealing the only thing he had left. She was hacking the firewall he built around his son's heart. "Meeting adjourned," Michael said, standing up abruptly. "You can't leave. The Japanese investors are on the line in 10 minutes. "I have an internal audit to conduct," Michael said, grabbing his coat. He walked out of the billion-dollar deal. The red dot on his screen had started moving, and like a heat-seeking missile, Michael Hayes was locked on. By 5:45 p.m., Michael was parked in his black SUV 3 blocks away from his own driveway. The engine was idling, the hum barely audible. On his dashboard screen, a red dot pulsed. Ava's car. He felt ridiculous. He was the CEO of Hayes Capital Partners. He managed $500 million in assets. And here he was, playing private investigator on a 24-year-old nanny. Why? Because Sarah had secrets too, a voice whispered. Sarah had late meetings that turned out to be oncologist appointments she didn't want to worry him with until it was too late. Sarah tried to protect him, and in doing so, she robbed him of time. She robbed him of the chance to say goodbye properly. He wouldn't be blind again. The red dot began to move. Michael put the SUV in gear. He kept a safe distance, 2 cars back. He expected her to turn toward the city center, maybe a boyfriend's apartment, maybe a bar, maybe a second job she was hiding to pay off debt, but Ava turned north, toward the interstate. 20 minutes later, the landscape began to change. The manicured lawns of his neighborhood gave way to strip malls, then to industrial warehouses, and finally to the dense, graffitied brick of the East End. A group of men stood on the corner, huddled around a burning oil drum. As Michael's gleaming $100,000 SUV rolled slowly past, their conversation stopped. Heads turned. Eyes followed him. Cold, calculating eyes that stripped the car down to its parts. Michael locked the doors. The click echoed loudly inside the leather cabin. He felt foolish and fragile. In his glass tower, he was a predator. Here, in the concrete jungle of the East End, he was prey. A siren wailed in the distance, a lonely, desperate sound that harmonized with the thumping of his own heart. He shouldn't be here. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to go back to the safety of the alarm codes and the gates. But the red dot on the screen was a siren song he couldn't resist. This was not a place for dental appointments. The red dot stopped. Michael slowed down. The street was lined with flickering streetlights and overflowing dumpsters. He saw Ava's Honda parked in front of a dilapidated building. The sign above the door was peeling. Harbor House Community Center. He frowned. A community center? He watched as Ava got out of her car. She didn't look like the nanny anymore. She pulled a heavy duffel bag from her trunk. Her posture changed. She stood straighter, braced for something. She walked up the steps and buzzed in. Michael waited. 5 minutes. 10. His mind raced. Maybe she was buying drugs. Maybe she was meeting someone dangerous. The suspicion was a familiar acid in his stomach. It was easier to believe the worst. Cynicism was safe. Hope was a liability. He turned off the engine. He grabbed his coat. I need to see, he muttered. He crossed the street, stepping over a puddle of questionable liquid. The building smelled of old rain and stale cigarettes. He tried the front door. Locked. He walked around the side. There was a row of windows, ground level, covered in grime but not barred. He peered through the gap in the blinds. What he saw froze him. The room inside was chaotic and vibrant. The walls were painted a mismatched yellow, covered in children's drawings and inspirational posters that were curling at the edges. There were teenagers everywhere. Some were arguing, some were playing a battered guitar, some were just sitting, staring at the floor with the 1,000-yard stare of veterans. And there was Ava. She wasn't buying drugs. She wasn't having an affair. She was sitting at a round table with a boy who looked about 16, hoodie up, jaw clenched, a scar running through his eyebrow. He looked like he wanted to punch the world. Ava was leaning in, talking. Michael couldn't hear the words through the glass, but he could see the body language. She wasn't lecturing. She was listening. She touched the boy's arm, just briefly, and the boy didn't pull away. He slumped, burying his face in his hands. Ava handed him a sandwich from her bag. She pulled out a notebook. She was tutoring him. Michael shifted his gaze. He saw other adults, tired-looking volunteers, waving at Ava. She was clearly a fixture here. She moved through the room with authority and grace, breaking up a scuffle between two younger kids, hugging a girl who was crying in the corner. This was where she went. This was her secret. She wasn't running away from responsibility at his house. She was running toward a heavier burden here. Michael felt a sensation he hadn't expected, shame. It washed over him, hot and prickly. He had projected his own darkness onto her. He had assumed that because he was hollowed out by grief, everyone else must be corrupted by something too. He took a step back, suddenly desperate to leave. To erase this intrusion, snap, he stepped on a discarded plastic bottle. The crunch was loud in the alleyway silence. Inside, Ava's head snapped toward the window. Her eyes locked onto the gap in the blinds. Michael froze. He was a deer in headlights, a billionaire voyeur caught peeping at charity. Ava stood up. Her face wasn't fearful, it was furious. She stormed toward the side exit. Michael turned to run, an instinct he hadn't felt since childhood, but the metal door swung open with a screech. Michael? Ava stood in the doorway, the alley light casting long shadows across her face. She looked at him, then at his SUV parked down the street, then back at him. The realization hit her. Did you follow me? Michael straightened his coat, trying to summon the CEO persona, the man who controlled boardrooms. It crumbled instantly. Ava, I was just concerned. The hours. The secrecy. You followed me. Her voice was quiet, deadly. You tracked me? I have a son to protect, he said, the defense weak even to his own ears. You were acting suspicious. I have a right to know who is influencing my child. Ava stepped out into the alley, closing the door behind her. The noise of the center muffled. You don't have a right to my life, Michael. You pay for my labor. You don't own my history. What is this place? He asked, gesturing vaguely. It's where I'm from, she said. I grew up in the system. Harbor House is the reason I'm not dead or in jail. I volunteer here because they are understaffed and drowning. She took a step closer, invading his space now. I lied to you because people like you don't understand this. You think money fixes things. You think if you can't buy it or insure it, it's dangerous. I didn't want your judgment. I didn't want you looking at these kids like they were broken windows in one of your buildings." "I don't think that," Michael stammered. "Don't you?" Ava gestured to the GPS tracker he was still clutching in his pocket. The bulge was visible. "You treated me like a suspect because I have a life that doesn't revolve around your grief." The rain began to fall then, cold, gray sheets of water that slicked the alley cobblestones. "I pay your salary, Ava," Michael snapped, his defense mechanism kicking in. When in doubt, assert dominance. "I have a right to know where my employee takes my vehicle. If you are burned out, that is a liability I need to manage." Ava's expression changed. The anger evaporated, replaced by something far worse, total disappointment. She reached into her purse. Her hand came out clutching the heavy magnetic keys to the Hayes mansion. Then, consider the liability managed, she dropped the keys. They hit a muddy puddle with a wet plop. "Ava, don't be dramatic. We have a contract. You have a 30-day notice period." "Sue me," she said, her voice flat. She turned toward the metal door. "Wait." The command died in his throat, turning into a plea. "Caleb, he needs you tomorrow. I have a flight to Chicago. I can't." Ava paused, her hand on the rust-spotted door handle. She didn't look back. "Caleb doesn't need me, Michael. He needs his father. He needs someone who isn't checking stock prices while he eats breakfast. I provide for him." Michael yelled over the rain. "You fund him. You don't raise him." She turned her head slightly. "Do you know he cries every night?" Michael froze. The rain soaked through his cashmere coat. He sleeps through the night. I check the cameras. You check the video. You don't check the audio. He cries into his pillow so he doesn't wake you, because he's afraid of upsetting you. He's 7, Michael, and he's walking on eggshells around his own father's grief. The metal door groaned open. "Goodbye, Mr. Hayes." The door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the narrow alley. Michael stood alone. He looked down at the keys in the mud. He had the tracker. He had the surveillance. He had the keys. He had total control. And for the first time, he realized that a fortress with no doors isn't a home. It's a tomb. 72 hours. That's how long it had been since Ava left. The mansion was no longer silent. It was screaming. Michael sat on the floor of the living room. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. The room looked like a hurricane had hit a toy store. He was surrounded by Lego bricks. Thousands of them. "It's wrong. It's all wrong." Caleb screamed, his face red and blotchy. He kicked the half-built tower Michael had spent an hour constructing. Plastic bricks shattered against the hardwood floor. "Caleb, please." Michael rubbed his temples. He hadn't slept. He hadn't shaved. The Tokyo deal had fallen through, costing the firm $12 million. He didn't care. "I'm following the instructions. Look, step 45. Ava doesn't use the instructions." Caleb wailed. "She builds the secret base. You're building a stupid office." The words were a dagger. Even in play, Michael built prisons. "Ava is gone, Caleb. We have Ms. Grimshaw coming tomorrow." "I don't want Ms. Grimshaw. I want my mom." The scream tore through the room. Caleb threw a plastic dinosaur at Michael. It bounced harmlessly off his chest, but it felt like a bullet. "If Mom can't come back, I want Ava. Why does everyone leave? Is it me? Am I bad?" Caleb dissolved into sobbing, curling into a ball on the rug. Michael reached out, his hand hovering over his son's shaking shoulder. He didn't know how to touch him. He didn't know the geometry of this kind of pain. "Is it me?" Michael stood up, his knees cracking. He walked to the window. He looked at his reflection. He didn't see the master of the universe. He saw a ghost. He walked to the main security panel on the wall. The blue light of the arm's status pulsed rhythmically. System secure. Secure from what? The danger wasn't outside. The danger was inside. The danger was him. Michael typed in the master code. Disarm system? He pressed yes. The lights on the cameras died. The motion sensors powered down. The electronic locks disengaged with a heavy thud. The house was open, vulnerable. For a moment, Michael hesitated. His hand hovered over the keypad again. It would be so easy to rearm it, to lock the doors, order a pizza, and hire a new agency tomorrow. To pretend the breakage inside him wasn't there. The silence of the house beckoned him like a warm bath, safe, numbing, familiar. He looked at his reflection in the dark security panel. The man staring back was a stranger. Hollow cheeks, dead eyes. A ghost haunting a machine. If he stayed here tonight, that ghost would become permanent. He would win the safety, but he would lose the boy. Don't be a coward, he thought. For once in your life, step into the chaos. Michael grabbed his keys, not the SUV keys. The keys to the old station wagon Sarah used to drive, the one he kept under a tarp in the garage because he couldn't bear to sell it. "Caleb," he said, his voice trembling, "get your shoes." Caleb looked up, sniffing. "Where are we going?" "We're going to find the secret base." Harbor House at night was a beacon of yellow light in a sea of gray warehouses. Michael walked in through the front door this time. He was wearing his suit, but the tie was gone. He held Caleb's hand so tight his knuckles were white. The noise stopped. The teenagers playing pool froze. The volunteers paused. Ava was at a folding table helping Marcus with a science project. She looked up. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Michael let go of Caleb's hand. Caleb immediately ran toward the dinosaur books in the corner. Michael walked up to Ava. He didn't say hello. He pulled a folded check from his pocket. $50,000, he said. For the roof. For the heating. For whatever you need. Just come back. Ava didn't look at the check. She looked at the dark circles under Michael's eyes. You think this is a negotiation, Michael? Everything is a negotiation. Double your salary, triple it. I don't care. Marcus, the boy with the scar, scoffed. He stood up, looming over the table. We don't want your guilt money, suit. Marcus, it's okay, Ava said, raising a hand. She looked at Michael. Keep your money. We have a leak in the basement that's flooding the boiler room. We don't need a check. We need hands. Can a check hold a bucket? Michael stared at her. I can hire a contractor. I can have a crew here in an hour. No, Ava said, standing up. No more outsourcing. You want to understand this place? You want to understand why Caleb laughs here and cries there? Then you do the work. She pointed to the basement door. The janitor, Mr. Henderson, is 80 years old. He's down there trying to stop a pipe from bursting. He needs help. Physical help. You're joking, Michael said. The exit is behind you, Ava said, sitting back down. Michael looked at the door. He looked at the dirty linoleum. He looked at Caleb, who was watching him from across the room, waiting to see if his father would leave again. Michael took a breath. The air smelled of mildew and hope. He took off his $2,000 jacket and draped it over a rusty chair. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. Where's the wrench? The basement was a steam-filled hell. It hissed and groaned like a dying beast. The water was ankle-deep, freezing and black with oil. Hold it steady, damn it, Mr. Henderson yelled, coughing. Michael was on his knees in the sludge. He was hugging a rusted pipe, trying to clamp a seal over a spurting fracture. The water sprayed into his face, blinding him. It ruined his shirt. It ruined his hair. It's stripping the thread. Michael yelled back, spitting out grit. You have to force it. Use your leverage, boy. You push pencils or you push iron? Michael roared with frustration. He channeled every ounce of anger he had felt for 3 years. The anger at the cancer. The anger at the empty bed. The anger at the silence. He put his shoulder against the wrench. His muscles screamed. The metal bit into his palm. Turn. Just turn. With a screech of protesting metal, the clamp tightened. The spray stopped. The hissing died down to a trickle. Silence fell over the basement. Just the heavy breathing of two men and the drip, drip, drip of water. Michael slumped back against the cold concrete wall. He was shaking. He was covered in slime. He was bleeding from a cut on his cheek. Mr. Henderson shined a flashlight in his face. The old man grinned, revealing a missing tooth. Not bad for a suit. Not bad. Michael started to laugh. It was a dry, hacking laugh that turned into a cough. He wiped his face, smearing grease across his forehead. When they walked upstairs, the community center was quiet. Ava was waiting at the top of the stairs. She saw the ruined shirt. She saw the blood. She didn't smile, but the ice in her eyes cracked. She walked over with a paper towel and gently dabbed the cut on his cheek. "You're a mess, Hayes. You should see the pipe," Michael rasped. "Caleb fell asleep," she whispered, nodding to the corner where the boy was curled up on a beanbag chair. "He told Marcus his dad was fixing the world." Michael looked at his son. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't the tight, cold grip of control. It was warmth. "Just the plumbing," Michael said. "But it's a start." Ava looked at the check that was still sitting on the table where he left it. She picked it up and handed it back to him. "We don't need this tonight. Come back tomorrow. Bring work boots." Michael took the check. He tore it in half. "I'll bring donuts and a new pipe wrench. 7 a.m., Ava said. "Don't be late." The real test came a month later. Harbor House was hosting a family night, a potluck dinner. Ava invited them. Michael was terrified. He was comfortable in boardrooms, not community centers. He brought a catered tray of lasagna that looked embarrassingly expensive next to the foil-wrapped casseroles. Caleb was clinging to Michael's leg as they entered. "It's loud, Dad," Caleb whispered. "I know, bud. It's okay." Ava found them. She knelt down to Caleb's level. "Hey, Caleb, there's a kid over there named Leo who likes dinosaurs. I told him you were an expert." Caleb's eyes widened. "Real dinosaurs? The best. Go check." Caleb hesitated, looked at Michael. 3 months ago, Michael would have said, "Stay close." He would have scanned the room for threats. He would have held on tight. Michael looked at the room. He saw Marcus laughing with friends. He saw the peeling paint he had helped cover up. He saw a messy, imperfect, beautiful community. He looked at his son. "Go ahead, Caleb," Michael said. "Have fun." Caleb let go of his leg and ran. Michael stood there, feeling the absence of the weight on his leg. It felt lighter. Ava stood up beside him. "You let him go." "I did." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," Michael said honestly, "and necessary." "You're doing good, Michael." Ava's voice was sincere. Marcus passed his test. He asked if the math guy was coming back next week. "The math guy?" Michael chuckled. "I've been called worse. Are you coming back?" Michael looked at her. He thought about the empty mansion. He thought about the silence that used to suffocate him. Then he looked at Caleb, who was showing Leo his dinosaur roar. Caleb was laughing, a real, belly-shaking laugh. "Yes," Michael said. "I'm coming back." 6 months later, the kitchen was no longer silent. It was a Saturday morning. The table was covered in papers, not stock reports, but drawings. Caleb was drawing a super base for his dinosaurs. Marcus sat at the counter, eating a mountain of pancakes, explaining a video game to Caleb. Ava was at the stove. She wasn't the nanny anymore. She had taken a full-time role as director of operations at Harbor House, a job Michael had helped her negotiate and secretly funded the salary grant for. Michael had hired a new housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Higgins who hummed while she dusted. But Ava was still here, not as an employee, as family. Michael walked in, carrying the coffee. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans. "Dad," Caleb yelled. "Marcus says T-Rexes had feathers." "That's a lie, right?" Michael set the coffee down. he looked at the chaos. There were crumbs on the floor. There was noise. He looked at his wrist. The Patek Philippe was gone. In its place was a simple leather band. "Actually," Michael said, grabbing a pancake, "the science is changing, kiddo. We have to be open to new information." He looked at Ava. She smiled, passing him the syrup. "Ready for the game later?" she asked. "Ready," he said. He touched her shoulder, a gentle, lingering touch. It wasn't a romance novel ending. They weren't married. They weren't fixed. The grief was still there, like a scar on the wall that you paint over but still know is there. Michael still missed Sarah every single day, but he wasn't haunting his own life anymore. He looked at the security panel on the wall. The screen was dark. He hadn't turned it on in weeks. "We're going to be late," Marcus warned, checking his phone. All right, Michael said. "Let's move out." As they piled out the door, Michael paused. He looked back at the empty kitchen. It didn't look perfect. It looked lived in. He turned off the light, stepping out into the sun. "Wait up," he called out. He ran to catch up with them. He didn't look back.